Welcome back. I'm talking to Derek Willis about his book, The Aldebaran Project, and we were just looking at some Sumerian stone tablets, and you think we've got, one of them is saying where they came from, another one is saying what's up in orbit, and another one, or other part of it, is saying what landed on the ground.
Yeah.
Right, and you think that they're revering all of these objects because it gave them some sort of phenomenal knowledge, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
So just tell us what that knowledge was, you think, that came out of this capsule.
Well, I think it's basically the sum total of everything that the species from Aldebaran had accumulated, sciences and technologies.
And you mentioned in your book that you think, imagine all the information on the internet, and it's like thousands of times more than that.
Yeah.
So what makes you think there's so much information given by that, you know, in this craft or whatever it was?
Well, I think it's an inference that I'm making because that's what we are currently doing now with probes that we are sending out of the solar system.
Yes.
My basic hypothesis is that the species from Aldebaran could see what was going to happen to their star and decided to send, you know, the benefits of their civilization to another species, and so that would include, you know, technologies that we can't even imagine now.
So this sort of intervention, if we call it that, from Aldebaran and with this, both the satellite and the landing capsule, you think that accounts for the expansion in human knowledge around that time that just some historians don't seem to be able to explain?
Yeah.
Right. All right. Now. And you then go on to talk about hermeticism. Just explain what that is and why you think it's important.
Well, hermeticism was really a sort of a synthesis of religion and philosophy. There was this, well, he's not really a god, but Hermes Trismegistus, which means Hermes thrice great, who was revered for his knowledge. And he received his knowledge from a series of books which allegedly came from the sky.
Right.
You know, so I kind of equate that with the arrival of the messenger.
Right, the belief that if humanity can achieve divine knowledge, known as the gnosis, of the workings of the universe, then by contact with the forces produced by the heavenly bodies, we can influence destiny. And you think that the elite have nabbed that knowledge?
Basically, yes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, and you know, I think a lot of people would agree with you there. And hermeticism was the forerunner to science.
Yeah. Well, it's split two ways. You could say it's the forerunner to astrology and the occult, but on the other direction, it's the forerunner of science.
Right. So just tell us a little bit about the Aldebaran star, how far away it is, and is it like the sun, and has it got any planets around it? Has Hubble discovered planets around it, for example? Just
well, it's now a red giant. It's 65 light years away, but it's actually technically an orange giant, which means it stopped fusing hydrogen just a few million years ago, and it's just beginning to fuse helium.
Right.
But sort of right at the outset, one of the first things I did before I embarked on the whole research was to see whether Aldebaran could be plausible as a star where there could have been a planet with a civilization on. And the age of a star is very important. I mean, there's many people talk about species coming from, say, Betelgeuse and planets like that.
Zeta Reticuli.
Yeah, but the problem is, huge stars like that aren't very old. They're probably only 200 or 300 million years old.
Right.
So you need a relatively small star, about the size of the sun. And so Aldebaran is about 1.5 times the size of the sun in terms of mass. And its physical size is much bigger now. So it's of the order of 3.5 to 4 billion years old. So there was plenty of time for life to evolve on any planets orbiting.
So you're comparing Aldebaran with the sun, and you're looking for similarities because you think that if it's life similar to ours, it would have a similar environment. And you also looked at Bracewell probes. Just tell us about that, because this is another thing that humanity has done or suggested that you think another race might have
Yeah.
beaten us to.
Yeah.
So just tell us what Bracewell probes are.
The idea of a Bracewell probe, it was first mooted by American scientist Ronald Bracewell, is that if you're going to send a probe to a distant star, you can't, because it's so far away, you couldn't really have real-time communications.
Yeah.
So the probe would have to be autonomous. It would have to make its own decisions when it got there. And one of the suggestions he made was that it would listen out for transmissions from a planet and then repeat the transmission directly back, because that's something that just couldn't occur naturally.
Right.
So that was the basic concept of the Bracewell probe.
Right.
And so my thoughts are that the probe that I call the Ancient Envoy is effectively a Bracewell probe.
Right.
But sent from Aldebaran.
Right.
Here.
Right. And it may be that they've sent out millions of them to lots of prospective planets, I suppose.
I wouldn't say so, because
there's billions of...
Yeah, but...
You think they've targeted the Earth?
I think they have, because I think they would have observed the Earth. I mean, you know, we're only just now starting to see exoplanets around other stars.
Yeah.
Well, obviously they would have had far better instrumentation and would have seen that the sun had a planet that was right in the Goldilocks zone, as they call it.
Right.
And so it was a good candidate for life being there.
And some of the knowledge that you think may have been derived, that you think has been secretized, you give quotes of, well, knowledge truly is power, and you've got a quote from Aristotle saying that the difference between the educated and the uneducated is the same as the difference between the living and the dead.
Yeah,
it's a bit strong, that one, isn't it?
Well, he was quite a character, I suppose, wasn't he?
Now, you also discussed some of the rumours of reptilian races and reptilian agenda, which do you claim that the whole reptilian thing started in 1983 with the film V? Or, I mean, we've got dragon myths and this kind of thing. Just tell us about your opinion on the reptilian phenomenon. Well,
my view on the reptilian agenda is that it's an allegory. It's not really talking about shape-shifting reptiles. I think it's basically talking about what I'm talking about, but it's kind of been dressed up in a more sensational,
metaphorical thing.
Yeah.
Right. I see. And that fear, which I speak about a lot, the promotion of fear in order to dumb down the masses, is linked to serpents, and fear of serpents. All right. Now, who are the Watchers?
Well,
where do they fit in?
The Watchers began as good guys, but were then their reputation was denigrated. My belief is that the Watchers were the people who, after the messenger arrived, there was various groups of people who
had the knowledge.
Who had the knowledge, yes. And there was the people who took it away secretly and have hidden it. But there was a group of people who they know of the arrival of the messenger, and they protect the knowledge that it exists.
I see. And they are referred to in some ancient texts, and are referred to as ER or IR. And you've also write about the Tower of Babel. Well, I mean, what do you think that was?
Well, I think originally, it was built as a library, which is where the messenger capsule was originally held.
Right.
But I think it was built, the dimensions of the Tower of Babel was conical, and I think encoded within that was information on the actual orbit.
All right. So just to pop this question in, Derek, what do you think of researchers, well, such as Sitchin and perhaps people like Michael Tsarian, who would say you've got Atlantis hundreds of thousands of years ago, and then Mu maybe 800,000 years ago, these alleged continents which suddenly also had advanced knowledge. Do you buy into that, or are you just looking strictly at sort of the last 6,000 or 7,000 years?
I'm just looking at the historical record,
Right.
and finding an explanation for that historical record.
Right. Right. Now, you also talk about the 5-pointed star, because this you think could be a symbol of this secret knowledge. Just tell us about that.
Well, I think it basically refers to Aldebaran, because often the pentagram is a red star, and Aldebaran is probably the most famous of the red stars.
Right. And the apple is often used as a symbol of knowledge, from the tree from Adam and Eve, and also it's fallen on Isaac Newton's head. And you reckon there's a secret thing coded inside an apple? Just tell us about that.
Yeah, well, that Pythagoras was famous for introducing that notion, but I think it was actually existed a lot earlier than Pythagoras. But basically, if you cut an apple across halfways instead of through the core, then the pips form a 5-pointed star.
Right.
And also, very quickly, the tannin will turn the apple a sort of a reddish-brown colour.
Right.
And so, to be a member of the Pythagorean Society, that's how you introduced yourself. You were handed an apple and a knife, and if you cut it the right way, they knew that you were part of the secret.
So it's a bit like a Masonic handshake.
Basically, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And interestingly, the Vril Society used exactly the same
Right.
method.
Fascinating.